Well, we're live for a show of 1 hour Supramental on April 27, 2025. The subject is waiting for free will. There you go. So for now, no one is there yet. But so I remind you that in the description of the live, on YouTube, the first thing you see in the description is the link to come and join us uh, in video conferencing to dialogue, participate in this show, uh, exchange our points of view, and ideally have a creative speech. So the subject of today is I speak free. So I'm going to start by giving you a little presentation. Actually, it's an excerpt from the film. It's not, it's just a little drawing. There you go. It's a little story. So it's in Scorpio that he wants to cross beers, and there's a toad that's on the arrival, and he tells him, "Well, can you take me to the other rival?" And the toad tells him, "No, I know you. You're going to tell me when we're in the middle of the river. You're going to sting me, and then we're gonna sink both of us, and I'm not going to die, so I'm not going to do it." No, and Scorpion says, "No, no, no. The problem is stupid. Ah, I sold the participation is very good. So I'll continue my little story. Scorpio lies. Well, listen, Toad. Problem. I'm not stupid, so I'm there. If I don't have any bugs, we'll cross the river, and then the way we'll get to the other. So, okay, the other tax accepts, and therefore it starts to cross the river, and in the middle of the river, Scorpion stings the toad until the Dubai toad is completely island. We're both going to die. And the Scorpion tells him, "Well, I can't help myself." There you go. And there you have it. That's the little story that uh, uh, I found interesting in relation to free will. That is to say that there in this short story, well, Scorpio, well, ooh, it's designed to steal other animals, and Jean-Luc. Everyone, hello. And then we arrived at 1 degree. You didn't want, you did the acclimate, then it's a better thing. Oh yes, it's better. And now, no, but now that it's good, you shouldn't try to put it horizontally just like that to see, because now that it's synchronized, no, well, too bad. Okay, no, but let go on, let go. So in my tests of, well, that's a little bit there. So tries on free will, yes or no. So, well, already what we can see is that two people with the same psychological, intellectual diploma profile, and, well, depending on the context where they live, that is to say, society, their family, well, they won't have the same potential for professional success. And it's validated by many sociological studies. So free will are, well, components that is independent of our will, which acts on our lives. Then I can take other examples. So in our lives, it often happens that we come across companions who always have the same psychological profile. So what is free will? That is to say, if we always attract the same type of person, well,
Mhm. Can wonder if we have a referee. Well, another example of practical life. That's it. We move around. We have an appointment. We start to take
And if we're a little late, well, in fact, well, in any case, I've noticed it several times. It's that everything will be put in place so that our little delay becomes like a snowball. And hello, Mario Olympus. There you go. No, you don't have to tilt your microphone, but go ahead. A little deaf. Well, I'm continuing my little story. And so, yeah, it's good. With, so at first we're a little late. And then in fact, if, for example, we're in a car, well, we're going to have one day more and more of events on the road that are going to accumulate to ensure that our delay is really significant and that, well, it's about believing that we should be late that day. There you go. And another point, if I talk about astrology, so astrology is in relation to our place and the date of birth or even time of birth. Well, it would seem so somehow, and our character is a bit like destiny events that we're going to encounter during our lives. Numerology this time is numerology. It's depending on our date of birth and our first name. And there too, with this numerology, well, we deduce our character and our life plan. All these examples seem to be going into the fact and the voice. So saying, well, we really have very little free will. So I'll end on, well, in esoteric astrology, which I studied a little bit, well, we're told, well, the sign where there's the moon is the sign of your previous life. Okay? And so that gives you, it tells you that your strengths and weaknesses are what you share with whom you come into this life. So the sign where you have the sun is what we usually know. It's what you have to learn in this life. You have the lessons that you have to learn. And finally, the ascendant, the sign in which there is the ascendant, is if you have taken the lessons of life from your sun sign, well, then at that moment you will go towards the sign of the ascendant. So there, it means that we have a little bit of free will. That is to say that in the same astrological configuration, well, depending on that, how to say, we learn our lesson well, we practice our exercises, and we successfully take our exams, we could move on to the next step. There you go. So listen, that's all the notes I took to prepare this show. So then there is whether you two, Jean-Luc and or Marie-Olympe, you want to speak up on this subject by raising points that are noted, or by approaching another point on the subject of free will.
I didn't speak because I have a little problem with the technique. I'm going to restart everything. Okay. Well, I'm sorry that it comes from, but don't be surprised. But don't be surprised because I see that Marie.
When you don't understand, you reboot. That's what I see in computers. There you go. There you go. Well, Marie-Olympe, for the moment, well, we're both staying. So I'd like to give you the floor to the book of will. So, well, actually, compared to the examples you gave, I feel that everything you talked about
could possibly relieve programming of the ego, finally, of the programming to which we land, and which means that suddenly uh, uh, we come around a bit with certain things in the suitcase, and which are ultimately things that can perhaps be compromised at the beginning. Working, be operate at the beginning when we arrive, but that little by little, well, in fact, the goal of the game is to actually disabuse. When there is programming, little by little, we start to get our hands on it. And so suddenly, for me, examples, all the subjects you covered, which suddenly served, well, could possibly serve as a benchmark. Well, suddenly, that that we don't use all that anymore, in fact. And finally, for me, that's still quite a belief. So after that, we should observe. That is to say, I don't have enough knowledge and skills in all the areas you mentioned to be able to actually, how to say, do self-analysis based on said knowledge, and from there towards a rapprochement with possibly my life journey, and see what things could possibly coincide. So, well, today for me, that's belief that is part of programming. Honestly, I wouldn't know how to say, well, in any case, I am not sure that it is relevant to, well, of what we maybe at the beginning. That's it. So, compared to beginners, explain the level, let's say, of the basket, basically with the beliefs that are hers, or that I am on the other level, or where the ego will walk more in the footsteps of her mind. But in both cases, indeed, in my opinion, the ego does not have free will. That's it. But I'm talking about the ego. That's it. That is to say that, in my opinion, we have free will to another dimension. So what makes it not the ego that he actually has is the ego. It executes everything. There you go. And there to execute, that's all he's asked to do if he wants to. There you go. That's kind of how I end there, like that. Okay, thanks. I just specify that, okay, we're talking about programming, and in fact, it's in the supramental.
Often talks about this programming to the point of, therefore, saying that our life is programmed in one way or another, and well, that's it. So Bernard didn't talk, and others after, like Jean-Luc, for example. So you see, finally, that's what makes me play the microphone. That's what makes you talk in the Contact One supramental show. Yeah.
Unable to get to what I was going to say, but what I can say is that one thing that came to mind is that, well, the program is us, it's us who indirectly reflects on the program. That is to say, that we build our lives according to what we are, what we have, and what we have not done. That is to say, if there are things to do, to build ourselves, to train ourselves, it is us who will project them. That is to say, what needs to be more circular of being. We will form obstacles so as to be what we want to be. And so obstacles or events or marathons, it's because of us. It's up to us to reproach them and not others. That's what it means, because we realize that there are programations that abort on their own. Well, events that there are things that are excluded. I'll give you an example. Everyone had pain where we have the feeling of having a bite in our arm dominated by the wound, or pain in the head, or very rapid cephalemic with the shot somewhere. Often these events or these pains are made to pass a milestone, build our vibration, as we could say. That is to say, pass a level. And in fact, it is this pain must continue, but as we must pass a case, and that we have just passed this case without being dependent or having had pain, a particular effect, we don't need pain anymore. It goes under water. And this pain goes underwater. Made me understand. I thought that, but I don't know if I've expressed myself anymore. It's interesting.
That, well, pain, but because precisely the aspect that you raised by saying, hey, we're programming ourselves. So, yes, I want to clarify that indeed in the supramental, we say, hey, our life is programmed, but indeed, we're the ones who program it. That is to say that in addition, in all schools of various and varied esotericism, we say to ourselves, well, before coming to embody, we make a program, that is to say that we list ourselves lessons to learn and experience.
To live, precisely to learn blood. Yeah. To learn the lessons that we learn ourselves. So before the supramental, it was to say, oh, okay, well, there you go. For the schools that say that our life is set and our life path is set, it's all set before being born. And once we know our experience, well, whereas what you just said, Jean-Luc, is that at the moment when we experience this life, well, we can change stages. That is to say, we can, for example, live our lives faster. That is to say, learn our lessons faster. And so at that point, it's the schedule, well, it's the timing that changes. Or the timing will accelerate, or if we haven't passed our exam. So there you go. We had to learn lessons to self-examine ourselves with, well, I'll take an example from a man with a compact, and well, and it's negative that the couple separates, but we didn't learn our lesson well. We're going to meet a new partner who's going to make us experience the same experiences. Well, to really make us learn our lesson, finally learn our lesson, that we reach our goal, the goals we had set for ourselves. If it doesn't work again with this campaign, and that we separate. And well, the third one will also have the same profile until we finally understand that we evolve, that the experiences lived with all these companions make us reach the point where we understood the lesson and we changed ourselves. And at that point, the next campaign won't have the same psychological profile anymore to provoke the experiences that we had previously. Was I written or not? Yeah, no more than you, but I think that's what's so good. It's that it's hard to express, but I think that's it. That is to say that, okay, we have a program, okay, from the beginning, it's marked in astrology and numerology and what we want. But these are the flaws, we'll say, the flaws we have to rectify as quality. We're going to try to be simple, and as long as we haven't had these flaws enough, we can't have these qualities.
And so astrology remains the same, and astrology is the number that remains the same as long as its flaws and qualities are not changed. And I bet everything you want that an individual who changes his astrology and his numerology changes, even if everything is based on an astrology of but that it will be much more compressed. That is to say that, okay, you'll have to go through jealousy, you'll have to go through the meanness, you'll have to go through a whole bunch of little flaws that will make it, it might be over 2 or 3 years instead of being over 30 years. And then something else will happen. And that's something else that can be interesting, because once you have Rabani or managed all these manigans that make we find ourselves faced with specific obstacles, we will, rather than undergo them, we will have more fun, or at least appropriate them, knowing how it was built, what it built us, why it was built, and how it can be destroyed. Not in the sense of destruction, but in the sense of passing this evolutionary system, passing this system late coming. Because if we looked closely, every time we had an obstacle, every time we were limited by a flaw, we always had a delay, we always had an immobilization, a lack of freedom. We are always alienated to ourselves. And so going through that automatically makes us pass on an alienation. There you go. I think that's that.
It's clearly clearer. And I'm just adding one thing. It's that I don't know where I hold it, but there was an insider saying to one of his disciples, well, that's good. Finally, you did well. You succeeded in your astrology, but finally you have your birth sky and so on. But hey, it's a shame that you're only successful and not that you didn't go beyond astrological quote who was who had at your birth, because you had potential to go much further than that. So that finally it's another way of saying what you just said. That's what you're saying, but I don't remember anymore. That is to say that sometimes I have tats, I have memory lapses, I have but I forget the details and I only remember, well, the essentials for me. I remember the conclusion without remembering who is telling me or on what occasion. So there, you want to add something, maybe.
It inspires you.
No, but that is to say that compared to free will, since you, so if that's the subject, therefore, in relation to what you say, Jean-Luc, therefore, in relation to the question asked for tonight's expenses, in relation to everything you just said, therefore, whether you want.
Once, that is to say, that when one is an arbitrator, to be free, well, this game, once we've done it, when the archer disdains, it's anonymous, a bog game. That's how it is. We're going to put it much material, less than possible. But as soon as we have but we become free will, we move on to having free will only when we leave the game. Then when we are no longer in these programming, in these obligations, in these minds, in these views, they've arbitrated, but we feel like having it because we think, because even through thought, we have no thought that comes from us. Since we can channel them, we can manifest them, since that imposes on us. So already at this level, we have no free will. We have no free will vis-a-vis of the will that we have to apply to our body some cannot have, and mechanisms of circulating that circulate without having a catastrophe at the body level. So already at this level, physically, we don't have an elevate thought. We just have the difficulty of having a free will when we think about it, but we don't have the possibility of having a free will when we want to have ideas, to have memories that come up, to have, everyone has had memory stuff, everyone has had difficulties thinking, everyone didn't find the words or the idea or meaning. So there's some who will say it's certain that on the other hand we can have a choice, but no one can say that you have a choice. It's not true. When and we are someone that you hypnotize and you give them one possible hypnotic function, that is to say you wake them up, and therefore you must have an action like, I don't know, throwing away on an order that we will have made with our fingers, or we wait 3 times in front of him. Well, yes, he does that, and then he's going to throw the calculator, and then you tell him why you threw the calculator there. Then he's going to tell you, I've lost hands, but why is she paused? Oh, because I'm clumsy. And you know that you're the one who put this program in the individual's head, this little program. input. So you realize that he doesn't even have the will, the ability to be able to oppose the order that has been made. That's where free will is no longer applicable. It's no longer applicable in terms of our will. It's no longer applicable in terms of our physical body. It's not applicable in terms of our mental body. So, and dramatic moments, whether it's a burial or a between, and it's not the right time. So from a viewpoint of your emotional body, you don't have refereeing. It works on its own. Creativity is the same. You're doing something and then it gives you information. You don't have the free will on that. We wonder what the free will is when you fight because you see you have shock and you give yourself a look. Yeah, it's a subtle body, a magnetic body that has detached itself, and bam, and everything. You find yourself in the when you put yourself in states of crisis, of almost of tomorrow. During childbirth, you have women who they have so much who puts her back and who shifts her, and then so that she does the job again, because otherwise we won't be able to get out of the baby. So she knows that there is free will in there. It's not the individual who is completely panicked. It's not the individual who brutally perceives while driving, and he doesn't have the book arbitration for his body, and he knows that there is the book arbitration of that. No one. We realize that even our boss, they can. When you consult people, some people have a psychiatric point of view. You are sometimes impacted by the individual's mind that you consult, and that blocks you with a state of thought, that is to say that you no longer have the possibility to think, to react, or to say something to someone. It means that you find yourself face to face with someone without being able to say that you don't don't. So if none of your subtle bodies have free will, well, if you no longer want to take free will at any time on your subtle bodies, and if they can take what they want and take it, how do you say, the Papem path or whatever, the Daka, that at no time do you have the possibility of rehabilitation. So I think that these are all well and good to say that we are not but we don't have the book referee to be able to stop dying just before it was like that. It's there was no release on that. It's hard to find a book. I'm fine with that. We're from the book, but on what? Oh no, but that's why I wanted you to specify what you had just said, because on what you specified there, I agree with you. Well, I am a little, well, it's not as clear to me if you want. It's on the fact that because I agree with you, because finally, I don't know when you left, come back earlier, because you could have followed the thread, but, well, it's true that I did the slightly more schematic thing in withdrawal, and that I said that the ego didn't show up free will, that to create a certain moment of his life, suddenly he acquires free will. He disciplines morality, identity. Whoa.
that you take the hand, and that suddenly, little by little, he manages to take the hand on the things he can take the hand on. Since indeed, no later than this weekend, I would make myself think that it is obvious that the person wants to stop breathing. Okay, I will succeed in a certain time. At some point, it will take over. I will not be able to block breathing. So on that, I join myself, where it is a little more vague for me when we speak there in relation to programming and who choose this programming. That is to say that, in fact, what you say, it's part of the things that have already crossed my mind, but I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. That is to say that indeed there is a possibility that I will be at the origin of my own programming, and that therefore I made myself like a kind of track game in quotes. Why not? So, to everything I could hear in the it's not even what I was called, but in the supramental current, in the supramental approach, I don't know, we call it what we want. It seemed to me to have understood that somewhere we didn't choose to be there, and that somewhere we're still a bit, well, where we're here, and then, well, we're a bit lost. And so suddenly, if I'm at the origin of my programming, and so I managed, how to say, in the form of code, send a treasure hunt to, therefore, that at the moment when I talk to you right now, I'm not able to visualize them, or to finally I feel like we're discovering things as we go along. So on that, okay, but so there you go, I have a little trouble being on my goal. In fact, why would I have sent myself here, myself programming with something that will put me in good mode? Sign. I had sent big post-its. It's mainly there. You saw the post-its there. That's it. It's under your what? That's a bit how I see it. So post-its, as Jean-Claude said earlier, well, sometimes you need 4 post-its, and then each time you grow 10. So that's what I've already crossed my mind. But I'm missing a piece of work. That is to say that, well, at that moment, why? Well, why all that? Why? You see, what? But there you go. But otherwise, yes, I agree with you on the distinction of saying yes. When you arrive, you're free to do nothing at all. You're free just to observe, possibly start asking questions, and maybe start to get confronted with a few things. And then, yes, indeed, at some point, well, little by little, yes, we can succeed in, but it's finally this, yes, when you see suddenly you play a team with yourself. So suddenly, as you're the one who decided at the start, well, it's actually related in the end. It's since suddenly the ego becomes gradually increasingly neutral, in quotation marks, less and less disrupted, and which, well, didn't talk about his mind. So there, well, that's it. But, well, I don't know if what I said is clear, right? That's it. There you go. No, otherwise it seems like we started with that's a bit like the archer who will jump tees, fall barriers, what do you call it? It's planned to run, I don't know if it's 800 meters, and then there will be 3, and bam, but you plan to jump, you are beautiful, bam, 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 bam. So if there is no programming, I think we should take it a bit like yam. So saying if there was no programming, we arrive,
And what are we doing now? We're going to be raised by dad because of dad, who makes sure not to be too bothered. And there are, what goal is this? What are we going to do? Is that it is what can we do? Don't have a job because there is no programming. We're going to learn anything. There is no way a family to do. Why would we find a family? There is no more. There is no law to have. Why would there be a law? Well, there is no understanding. Why would there be a need to have something? We're not going to do anything. We're going to settle down quietly in an armchair and then wait for the end. I don't know. There's something missing in Italy, that we were given the will, we were given the direction, and we were given obstacles to test our will and a direction to have the impression of doing something instinctive. Otherwise, we have no interest in being on this field. Basically, that's how I see. If there was no programming, yes, that's it. Radio, you just connected. Hello. Today, I'm going to give the floor, but yes, that's the whole philosophical debate of existentialists who say that we are on Earth, we have no goal, we have nothing to do, and then the first thing is the first decision that man will make. It's since I'm going to die, and this life goal, will I commit suicide or not? If I do what I do with guidelines,
Will I do everything for myself and then at the expense of others? Finally, where am I going to take? I'm going to have a life of monks. Finally, there is all this debate there that yes, that's it. It's we finally had. If there is no goal, if there is no reason to live, if there is nothing special, and our life is going to be absolute chaos. But anyway, right? Sorry, but excuse me, you didn't, Mario just connected because we have about a quarter of an hour left. So I wanted to give him the slap. If yeah.
I think I'm getting a little tired. No, but no problem. Maybe I hope I'll be the best. I was late than never. Yes. Well, I have more. So what I wanted to say about my subjects. Everyone's search, everyone's liberty or not. It's a bit of a confrontation with the world, constant. And of this ordeal, of this confrontation, well, a little can define that further. Some may submit a little to the divine law, and some Renaissance. We are all a bit subjected to certain difficulties. Like suddenly, it's a bit of life.
Because you see, the debate was, well, are we free from everything, or are we in entire future life? Well, are all the passages through which, all the passages are already planned. all the points that in our lives, that's it. At 20, we're going to do this. At 30, we'll be this. At 40, we'll have this, and so on and so forth. That's what it is. That's also the problem, the question of whether we are regions, destined or not. That's it, destined or not. There you go. Well, we can already say that society does everything to submit to us certain parts, let's say, because we all follow a bit of the same path to study, to have to work a lot between us and Molly. Children logically work, but that's it. That's what Bernard Montreal calls the memory of race. That is to say, depending on the country you're in, well, you know, the social context will make that, well, everyone should follow the same example. Well, should follow. That is to say that society expects each person to follow the example of that will be mistaken for and that the majority of people follow.
it could be a bit peasant. It could be very difficult to get out of it, to define one's behavior while we're constantly suppressed about expectations, rights, and left. It could be hard to get ideas, whereas the ideas of others may seem random or dominant, or in a certain way, it can be very difficult to define your triangles while trying to retrace a certain wood, but because precisely you see there in this example where you take to say, look, society invites us to go in a direction to follow a certain path of life. Well, you could take it like, well, it's an exercise for practicing our will to not do like everyone else, for example. You could say that you did wait the all that society asks of individuals. Well, it's a way of testing everyone in relation to free will, but in relation to the desire to do, as we know, we feel that we should live our lives without meaning to say, I don't know, we have our colleagues. Well, if we have a job, it's our work colleagues. Finally, no, I'll take another example. That is to say that we are at a certain moment, we live our lives, we have such a job with such a colleague, with such a family. And if ever, well, there we encounter the ultramental, which tells us, well, our life is programmed. It's we would rather need, or it would be better for our evolution, in quotes, to do this or to do that. That is to say, if, for example, with colleagues, well, in the evening, at the end of the day, I take an example in Japan, and well, there, the individual is almost forced to go and get drunk in the evening when leaving work with his boss. Japanese, it asks that the individual integrates really well into the professional structure to the point of sharing bins like that. Well, there, it's if ever the Japanese person will start to want not to see alcohol with her colleagues in the evening, and well, when she's going to be subjected to a lot of pressure,
from the group that hasn't been in the same language. Yeah, and so social pressure. And so you can say, well, it's an exercise of, there you go, we're presented. I made this program before being born. I'm going to put them on purpose in Japan, where there is social pressure enormous, and it's going to be an exercise for me in developing the will and in
Finally, the authoritative. Finally,
yes, of making decisions in life that can perhaps generate drawbacks in the short term, but on the other hand, I would be happier not with my colleagues and so on and so forth, because I have other goals of life. So I think it was ridiculous to be dissociative, deciding, for example, that everyone who presents me with society is bad at office, and suddenly I absolutely love others, and I have to leave often. I think there are some people who could be in the position of saying to themselves, well, I'm right, society is wrong in every corner, but it's rare it's people who really
Is so complete to say, well, on all the points I can reach my checks. It's a pleasure, whether it's society on the point of workflow on all points. I think that someone intelligent, he manages to share things, he manages to miss out on things that are good for him, things that are not good. And in many cases, the intellectual sensitivity of boxes develops by confronting the things that appeal to us, the things that do not match what. Over time, we manage to sort, we manage to do things and eliminate. That's all the things that weigh us down. The most efficient, well, is by eliminating certain discomfort. If we understand that, well, things, well, we can't rhythm and do something.
Okay.
Compared to the level, I think it's really aware of people who, when I do things, even selective constant, what? Something, well, on the contrary, to integrate us, in fact, a life path, that is to say, well, maybe I have to work after all. I have to find something very intimate, something very common for everyone, something very common for certain stages.
Okay, thank you too, Rael. Okay, thank you too, Rael. I had listened to Mario speaking, but hey, I don't know if we can take the movie. Yes, Mario, sorry I cut you off, or there's no problem. There's no problem. No, what I was gonna say simply to wrap up is that once again, I join Jean-Luc on what he presented just before speaking out. That is to say that indeed, if we landed without programming,
it could be more or less complicated, but suddenly, so there would be a necessity for programming to work on this plan. There would be a usefulness to programming, especially how to say no, yeah. But in fact, that is to say, programming would be like a treasure hunting, quotation marks, the life size for us, for our ego, and or to take back control. So all that, I completely agree on that. But my question remains entirely certain. But why? Good evening. Good evening. We say to ourselves, well, go and do them? Well, to congratulate. So what? Damn, damn, it's actually damn, it's because, well, everything holds up anyway. Everything is connected. We see it here in the density, but suddenly it's the equivalent. Everything is connected. So suddenly it brings another one. But suddenly, what? Why? Well, now I regret it. Yes, but that's one very good question, and I planned a different show on the subject. Life makes sense. There you go. That's what you're telling me. Why? Why? What comes to me is life. What is the reason for being there in several bags? What is the reason for being of this, well, of this more than meaning? The word meaning, in short, it's too commented on. For me, it's already too strong. But maybe not saint that we must want. Okay, okay. No, but today you wanted to, if you wanted a little thing there regarding programming. If there was no programming, if no one had any programming, we would just look at when there are no more laws in one and the car are blocked. As soon as there is no more light or no more fire at the crossroads, everything is blocked. There is no more traffic to go in and out in 7 stores. There are only names of lanes of revolving doors that will rent track.
That is to say that if there is already not a law or direction of each one must have, there is not enough intelligence in each individual to be able to work. There is no obvious difference for each individual. Who is small field, old, bad or kind, so that it works, it blocks. There is chaos, it stops. There is nothing left. Even if we put laws, and that's what we're doing now, there are laws, and there are, despite the laws, that's blocked because there are people who don't have enough intelligence on that and who are going to do anything, and we have to constantly apply laws, put laws back in place. Because it's a bit like there wasn't enough program for individuals who are, we are extraordinary, who are undermined by indigence. So in fact, we realize that if we have programming, it's
Jean-Luc, there's something that came to mind, which is that the comparison you were making on a milk race. I would compare life to an escape game. That is to say that an escape game, it's a bit more modern. So if I've never done it, but I think I understood how it works, that is to say that there are a number of events that are planned. That is to say that the entrance of the escape game. Okay, so in addition, it's very good because we go there as a team. And so the team must solve a whole bunch of puzzles for in a limited time for gaining this game and before getting out of it. And in fact, every time we have an enigma to solve, we don't move on to the next phase until we have solved it. And well, and so after, well, we have, I don't know, about 10 riddles to solve in the game to consider that we won. Well, it's a bit like the image I give of life, that is to say that we gave ourselves a certain number of puzzles to solve. In fact, it's situations to make
Yes, improve exchange. One of our flaws in quality
And then, well, if we have passed all the puzzles, that is to say, all the experiences that we have planned, well, we have gained the right to get out of it. But possibly once we have done that we have solved all the puzzles, and well, we have a book, game, we still have a small portion of life left where we can do what we want, and yes, retirement elsewhere. And we can do what we want. That is to say, it's no longer in our programming since we've passed all the stages that were planned. And so after that, we have real free will. That's how I see it. You want to add something? It's 9 a.m., but if you want to add a little something, go ahead.
No, but I'm fine. Fine. No, I think so. Stop. One last thing. Huh? One last thing, I'm telling you.
With the microphone. Yeah, that's the most intelligent thing, to talk to microphones. And
What I could say that the following is the experience that allows us to classify things in relation to certain things. We don't know well when we experience certain experiences. Nevertheless, it's the knowledge that multiple
Experience where it wasn't necessarily dead. Yeah. It may be to forge an effort of intelligence that obstacles are given to us.
everyone needs to tell me something. No, help me.
Actually, I was listening to you speak, and what came to me, so it's a relationship with myself. Since in any case, I can't question myself about humans and the world, but I can only relate to myself. And what came to me, as far as I'm concerned, of course, is that what makes me, indeed, if I change the perspective and observe my perspective of being exile, rather for obstacles than enemies, I see them as post-its, self-post-its, and it still that I would actually like to take your skate game. I still glued myself to something really crazy. But then I'm going to dig into it because it just came to me like that listening to you. But it would seem that I did everything to really be present. I explain myself, that is to say, to be not to be obliged, but it sends me back. That is to say that earlier Raed, for example, talking, it's Raed, I think he was talking when he was talking about the socio-cultural environment in which you evolve, or the country and so on. You talk about Japan and the fact that, for example, there you go, you're going to have dinner with my boss, and well, if you don't drink because damn, you're not going to be part of the group. Well, typically we experience this kind of thing, but very early on. In fact, we experience it from childhood, we experience it from school. Well, these are situations that we experience very early on. This thing of passing through the group, but seeing them, well, there you go, we have to join the group. And me, in fact, managed to belong to a group because there has always been a moment that made loyalty, integrity, and it was always integrity that took over. So integrity made me finally choose integrity. I chose myself. I didn't choose my integration into the group, really. So, well, I'm going to dig into my thing because, well, because it came to me as obvious. In fact, there you go.
Had a very positive effect. That's it. Yes. Thank you, Mario. And so the next show, it's going to be, so next Sunday, the subject is to believe nothing. There you go. There you go.
Okay.
But don't believe it. Okay. Thank you to you who participated, those who are going to watch. Yeah, and have a good week, everyone. Good environment. Thank you for seeing. Bye. Bye.